everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Women of Insurance. I'm your co-host, Ezra Luz Johns.
And I'm Tiffany Choi Menard. Thank you all for joining us for another inspiring conversation where we highlight women who are making impact through leadership, personal growth, entrepreneurship, and service. So today we are excited to welcome a guest whose journey combines science, leadership, personal development, and the courage to embrace change. Carolyn Day is a chemical engineer, a former senior EHS leader, certified life coach, and founder of Safe Day to Change. Her foundational roots are in Brazil, and her formative adult years are firmly planted in California. She is a Bay Area local that built a successful career leading environmental, health, safety, and operational initiatives in biotech, pharmaceutical, and manufacturing organizations before stepping into entrepreneurship and personal development. After spending years helping organizations manage risk, Caroline became fascinated by the risks that people also avoid in their own lives. So, through her coaching, speaking, and writing, she helps individuals develop the emotional resilience, self awareness, and actions needed to move forward when life feels uncertain. Drawing from her experiences as an immigrant, engineer, corporate leader, entrepreneur, wife, and mother, Caroline shares practical insights on mindset, personal growth, and overcoming self imposed limitations.
Her message is simple. Growth requires creating enough safety within yourself to take the next step. Today, Caroline speaks about navigating change, overcoming fear, and building the confidence to choose a new path, even when the outcome is unknown. Caroline, welcome to Women of Insurance. We are so excited to have you here. One of the reasons Tiffany and I were looking forward to this conversation is because your story resonates with so many women in our audience. In insurance, we're constantly helping clients prepare for uncertainty and manage risk. Yet many of us struggle when we're faced with uncertainty in our own lives. Your background gives you such a unique perspective on that. And so let's start at the beginning.
Mhm. Yeah, so Caroline, you were born in Brazil and you eventually built your life and career here in California. Tell us about that journey. Like, what was it like navigating a new country, a new culture, and then ultimately building a successful career?
Thank you so much for having me. This is amazing. I love the opportunity to be here with both of you today. I'm excited because I've been following both of you. I've attended some of these episodes, the podcast episodes, so I'm really excited to be here today. And it's an honor because it's true. I think we can all somehow relate to each other's stories. I came here, I was 16 years old, so I was born and raised in Brazil, and I didn't speak a word of English. So I landed in California. I went to Sad City High, go Warriors. Uh, and I really didn't speak the language. So my first thing, like I really had to abandon my identity. I was a really good student. I was a dancer back in Brazil, and I really felt like I had to abandon my identity as who I was to become this new person coming here, adopting new culture. And so I went through a huge transition in my life at the age of 16, having to learn new language, having to learn different types of culture. And it's not just that. If you guys are in the Bay Area as well, and so you know how dynamic it is here too, like not just the cultural within, the subcultures that are in South San Francisco and also like in the Bay Area. So it's not just about learning one culture, it's about really learning how to navigate among many cultures, as we have it here. And also microclimates and all of that. Everything was
All
just
of them.
very, very new. But, it took me a long time, to kind of learn the language, learn the culture a little bit. By the time I graduated from high school, I went into City College because I didn't have enough credits to go to a UC university, so I had to get credits somewhere else before I went and attended San Jose State with to pursue a chemical engineering degree. So it was definitely my very first experience of a huge transition in my life.
Wow. I didn't know you got into San Jose State. Go Spartans. I did too.
Congrats. Yeah.
Um, and Carolyn, thank you for sharing all of that. How did your experience as an immigrant shape your mindset, about resilience, adaptability, and personal growth?
I mean, it's hard to say as a kid, right? Because I moved here as a kid, it wasn't like I was trying to grow or adapt. It's just I had to. So it
Mhm.
was really like I was put in a situation, and I feel like a lot of the children that were in my ESL 1, there are like 6 levels of English as a second language, and I started in ESL 1 because I knew so little of English. And by the time I graduated, I was in a regular English class, thanks to summer school. And so for me, I think navigating was just a form of survival. It wasn't a strategy. I was a kid, so I was really trying to survive. My parents also didn't speak the language, so I was the immigrant that was trying to learn not only for myself, but also to sustain my family, to make sure that I was helping at home, to make sure that I would translate things that were going on. So I had to become an adult very early also because of all of the experiences that my family and I were going through at the time.
Mhm.
Wow.
And wow, wow. Like it just sounds like, as a child you had a bigger vision, right? You had the like bigger purpose. You wanted to help your family. Um, and wow, that's really admirable and like commendable. Um,
I wouldn't have guessed your English as a second language to you.
yeah. I feel like
Hearing
you
light
could speak better than me.
well versed. That's amazing.
I've been here for over 20 years, so I hope by then I would know a thing
Yeah.
or two now. Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I was born in America, but I sometimes feel like I'm still ESL.
Well, if you
Same
grow
here.
up, yeah, well, if you grow up speaking a different language at home, then you kind of feel like that for sure. I remember in my ESL 1 class, there were kids that were native speakers, of like Spanish or other languages. And I
Hmm.
remember being astounded by that because I didn't want to be like that. I couldn't believe that someone who was 16 like me was born here and was in an ESL 1 class. But because of what was going on around me, like you guys know, in the Bay Area, there's so much access to a second language. You can press dos for Espanol, you know what I mean? Like you can press two for Spanish. And so because there's so many, like the people that moved at the same time that I did, or even before, there are whole communities here who only speak their native language, even now in their homes. And so when they go to school, they struggle to learn because they've been speaking in Russian, they've been speaking in Chinese at home, they've been speaking in Arabic, they've been speaking in Spanish. And so when they go to school, even in some of the schools that offers English as a second language, because they have this access and they're not put it into survival mode, I feel like it's almost like there's no urgency to learn another language. But for me, it was just the opposite. When I saw people that were born here still didn't speak the language, I did just the opposite. I said, I don't want to be in the situation where it would take me 16 years to learn. It was actually it fuel my um, desire to learn English. But I was also made fun of because I seriously had a dictionary under my arm the entire time. Like I wanted to know what everything was, and I was just like, "What is that word?" And then I would see the translation on my dictionary.
Pre-Google.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I'm dating
cool.
myself now.
Um, kind of to talk more a little bit about like your role in corporate. You spent so many years helping organizations manage environmental health and safety risks.
Right.
And, most people don't immediately associate that type of work with life coaching. How did that transition happen?
Oh, very good question because they don't, and they still don't. There are a lot of people that still question, what it is. I think the word coaching or coach is very overused, misused at times because there are a lot of therapists that go into the coaching route and then they get specialized or certified in coaching. But because of their therapy background, they ended up serving people in multiple modes. And so I think learning the difference is crucial. And even for me, I remember in 2019, I had already reached what people believe was the American dream. I had graduated college. I had found a really good job at a biotech company. I got married, had a baby, bought a house. And so I felt like I was very accomplished, but then I felt like all of my accomplishments were not really intentional because I felt like somebody sold me the dream, right? My parents came here in pursuit of an American dream, and they weren't wrong. Like it's all great to have, be career oriented and be family oriented, but I felt like I was just going with the flow. And so in 2019, when I found that I had all of it, but I was still unfulfilled, I didn't know the reason. And I kind of learned with coaches what that was about, that I needed a purpose, that I needed to find my purpose in life. But at the time, I was helping labs with environmental health and safety. So I wasn't really doing anything of, that a coach would do. But because I hired different types of coaches, I started to go through this process of discovering myself, and I really learned what a coach, like a really good coach, does, which is to guide you from the experience where you are now into a path that is best for you, that is really traced by you, but they are there to really provide light, purpose, perspective. And what I really liked about that is I was talking to so many coaches at the time that I thought, maybe, and I was listening to On Purpose podcast by Jay Shetty, and
Mhm.
he has a Jay Shetty certification school for people who want to become a certified life coach. And
Mhm.
I was approached by someone who called me and said, Caroline, would you like to be a coach? And I remember going, oh, I don't know, because, I didn't know really the difference between a therapist and a counselor and a coach. But then because I took the course, I decided, like I'm going to try and I'm going to see if this is for me. And I learned so clearly the difference between the two. And so for me, it wasn't misused anymore. Like I really understood the difference between being a therapist, which you require a PhD of, a specialized education in order to understand someone's story and be able to diagnose the patterns that are happening in their lives. And I don't have that ability to diagnose, to look at your life and understand the patterns that someone is going through. But unlike a therapist, a coach is someone who tries to understand where you are now and is going to navigate with you. Where do you want to go next? What is your goal? What is the purpose of it? Like the why, and what are the options to get there so you don't go alone? Which to me made a lot of sense because in any career, even like in insurance, in any career really, alone you can only go so far.
Mm.
But if you have someone to really help you, to advise you, to hold your hand, to ensure that you have this accountability for yourself, you go much further. And that's what a coach is. And so for me, when I learned the meaning of being a coach, and when I learned some methodologies through Jay Shetty, who is highly recognized,
Mhm.
really teaches so much. It was only 6 months of training, but for me, it was like 10 years of training because it's all in one package, right? And so I was able to learn so much about what are some of the methods that you can use in order for you to be a coach and become a coach and help other people. And then on top of that, you have to work, you know, 40 at least 40 hours with people to try to coach them. And then during that journey of mine, I really fell in love with seeing the transformations in people that I was not causing because they are the ones making the changes in their lives, but how much my conversations with them were affecting them. And so that was huge. Even though my environmental health and safety, my engineering background was not related to coaching, I still could see how my background was able to help them just a little bit further. Because there
Mhm.
are a lot of clients of mine that were in situations that I was prior. There were
Mm.
clients of mine that had gone through experiences that I could relate to, empathize with. And I think because of the background that I had, and also when I was an EH&S manager for a biotech, I really concentrated a lot of my work, especially in the last 3 years, on psychological safety.
Mhm.
Because as a safety manager, I had to establish a rapport and I had to establish a relationship with lab users such that they would come to me if there was
Mhm.
an incident. If there is a spill of a solvent material, you
Ooh.
want to be able to trust your safety manager. And
Mhm.
there are a lot of people in biotech, for example, that if certain things happen in the lab, they're more hesitant to share. They're afraid of coming clean. They're afraid of being fired, depending on what the incident is. And so
Mhm.
creating and establishing trust with people was essential to the work. And so because I had already worked on that as being a safety manager, bringing that into my coaching was almost natural to me. So, yes, it's very different, but I think that there were a lot of things that I learned in my past profession that is really helping me now as a coach.
Nice. I love how you're connecting, you know, your past life to what you're doing now. Um, and it's giving you a foundation. And you know, I I was listening to what you were saying about how other people are afraid to come up, afraid to say something's happening just for their safety even, right? For someone listening, you know, who feels successful on paper but unfulfilled on the inside, what are some signs that they may be living according to other people's expectations rather than their authentic selves? Like, do you think people are often more afraid of change than they are of staying stuck?
Mm. I mean, it's hard to say what they are more of, right?
Mm,
Like the differences are so great that I could never guess or assume. But
mhm,
one thing I can say is that everybody is afraid of something, whether it's change or otherwise, right? You're either afraid of change or you're afraid of being stuck or you're afraid of both and you don't know where to go from there.
mm,
And everybody that is living right now, they might think they don't know themselves, but they all do because they've been living with themselves for as long as they've been alive. And so when somebody comes to me and say, "Oh, I don't know where to go," I think it's because we don't have manuals for life. And
Mm-hmm.
so we feel lost at times. And we forget that we're all like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's okay to feel the way we feel, to be where we at and not know the answers because we don't know the answers sometimes. Most times we don't know the answers. And so for those who are afraid of change, but if you're seeking change, I think that's a signal,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because sometimes, even if you say, like, are there people that are more afraid of change or afraid of being stuck? It depends, but they will know.
Gotcha.
Because if they're afraid of being stuck, they're asking these questions at the very least to their friends, to themselves. When they wake up, they're like, is this really it? Like I did. There was a point in my life where I was like, I did everything. Now what? It wasn't like, wasn't fulfilled with my life. And so people will come across either these moments where they're going to question themselves, or they will see other examples in their lives and they will crave that. And
Mm-hmm.
they will all of a sudden find out, wait a minute, I want this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they've never seen it before, right? But then all of a sudden they see an example of it,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden they're craving it because you don't crave what you don't want. What's not for you, I've never craved being a golf player. Okay. Some people dream of that, right? And so what you dream of, right? Like your desires, they are yours and nobody else's. But they will either come up inherently because they're meant for you, or they will come up in signals in other people, and you will see the signal, and it will be for you, for nobody else but you. My signal, for example, was when I read the book Educated by Tara Westover. Highly recommend the book if you haven't. Um, but it's a book about a person who went to college at the age of 16, and that was the first time they were stepping foot at a school. And because their family was very much against anything related to the government, and they just didn't believe it in going to school or going to the hospital or being helped by the government. And so they lived very isolated.
Mm-hmm.
But the girl really wanted to go to school. And when she went to school, it was a shock for her because everything was new. And I felt the same way at the age of 16. I came and everything was new. But the difference was she went to college. And when she came home, home didn't feel familiar anymore. She
Mm-hmm.
learned so much at school. Like her mind had changed when she went to school. And so when she came home, things felt different. And I remember reading and going, this is very relatable. Like I'm learning all of this, and now it feels unfamiliar. Like it doesn't feel like it's me. And I feel like a lot of immigrants can relate to that, where they go home and that doesn't feel like home anymore. But then now the place where they move is also not feeling like home. And so they're, in a place where they feel very confused but the difference is in this book, she was able to tell her parents, no, I want to stay here. Because her parents end up going to her and say, you're brainwashed by school, come back home. They want her to go back to the little girl that she was in her family. And that felt very different for me. And so I think whoever is watching this, you're going to come across either a situation or a person or a behavior, and it's going to draw you to that. And I think those are the answers. And for every signal you get, listen to them. I think that's a really good and important thing is to listen to the signals that are coming for you.
Gosh.
That that was very, very impactful. I was just thinking like, oh, for, those individuals are feeling stuck or, maybe seek change, and you said listen to those signals, listen to the link. But what would you say is one action step they can take, to
Yeah.
evaluate those signals, or need to first, like, to start on that journey or whatever. Like, maybe what if someone's getting like signals from all over the places? How do you choose one is the right one for you?
Yeah. So obviously there will, if there are a lot of signals, that's a great sign. I
Mm.
know people are probably overwhelmed if there are a lot of signals, but that's actually a great sign. It means it's actually working for you. It means the person is very intuitive. If there are a lot of signs going on and you don't know how to read them, right? If you are in that part where you can recognize them, I would say finding a coach is extremely helpful because it will help you interpret them. But if you, let's say you're not that close to your intuition and you feel tugged by something, but you don't know what to do. If you don't know what to do, I think the first thing that you can do is write it down.
Mm.
Because what happens is you take whatever is going on in your body and you're putting it out in front of you. And by creating this distance between what you see or what you feel and who you are is a huge part of perspective. Once it's once you create a distance between it, you can actually read it. You can actually see a little bit better. It's almost like putting, if you're right next to the tree, you're only going to see bark. But if you walk
Mhm.
away, you're going to see the beautiful tree, right? And
I
so
love that.
giving yourself a little bit of space between what is going on and putting it in a piece of paper, whether it's journaling or it's really just like, I'm going to write my thoughts today, or I'm going to write my dreams today. Once you write it down and you look at it, I think that's step number one, is really like, how do I go about this? Do I tell a friend? Do I tell a family member? Do I tell a professional? Whoever it is, I think just not being afraid of exploring any signals that you might have just seen.
Nice. You know, it's that was one thing that I can really relate to. Especially after my back injury, there was a lot of uncertainty. And I did experience a season where I really didn't know what life would look like physically, emotionally, financially, you know. But going back to you, looking back, were there moments where fear or uncertainty almost prevented you from taking your next steps?
Absolutely. I mean, fear is a great thing, right?
Mm.
Because it prevents you from getting killed, it prevents you from accidents, right? When you're afraid of something, it's really your body protecting you from acting on something that it feels unfamiliar. And so your body is literally stopping you because it thinks that something bad is going to happen, right? So fear is good, right? But the more you have these conversations with yourself, if you journal a lot or if you ask yourself these questions, it's really about, or you're really giving space to what you feel and what you see. When you do that, you actually start realizing that not everything your body says to you is true. There are a
Mm.
lot of things, because remember, your brain is a collection of your past.
Mm.
That's all there is, right? Your brain is a collection of everything that happened to you, who you are, your likes and dislikes. And so it collected everything, right? But that's
Mm.
all there is. It's the past. And so everything that you're going to do that has to do with the future that is not the same as the past is going to feel unfamiliar.
Mm.
And because your body use fear to stop the brakes, right? You have to start questioning your fear, or at least the moment that you put it down somewhere, you talk about it with someone. when you
Mhm.
write it down and you see, I'm afraid of X, Y, and Z, right?
Mhm.
That's when you can really identify, is that fear protecting me from unfamiliar grounds? Or is that fear really trying to stop something that is hard to deal with, right? And those are
Mhm.
things that you have to really learn, right? You either learn through, reading literature or getting with someone because it's hard to do that on your own. I hired a coach for myself to understand those things. I also hired a therapist at the time to understand my feelings and what was going on when I felt unfulfilled. But I did hire someone because I was committed to finding the answer. And I think that's crucial. There's a difference between, oh, I want to know what this feeling is, to, no, I really want to know what the next path is.
Mhm.
And so I think that's why my action was really going out there and finding someone, because I was so determined to find what is the next step for me. So being afraid of doing things, I mean, I'm afraid all the time,
Mhm.
really, like, and I'm not afraid to say it either, because I feel like when you say I'm afraid, then somebody can say, yeah, but that happens to everybody. Like when you
Mhm.
share that out loud, like I'm so afraid of, my daughter is just ending elementary school, going into middle school. And I'm so afraid, like so many reasons, like finding new friends, going to a new school. But then when you share that out loud and somebody says, yeah, I am too, or yeah, this is normal, then you know that this fear is not to unharm you. You understand that this fear is trying to protect you because it's unknown, but
Mhm.
there's no imminent threat.
Mhm.
And so the more you understand your fears, the more you can navigate, the better you can navigate your life. So when I talk to my clients, I'm not talking to my clients about eliminating fear. I'm
Mhm.
talking to my clients about understanding their fears so that they know the difference. Is it the one with the pit on your stomach where you don't want to move forward? Or is it the one that everybody has and it's just the unknown? And we can talk about what's the worst case scenario. And you see that there's not really anything bad that can happen. It's just you being a normal person and navigating something new. And so I think that's what's important. It's not to ignore fear, because I think that that's an issue too. And I was like that as well for a long time as an engineer. If I was afraid of something, it was not something that I would share with anyone,
Mm.
because as an engineer, I was very practical. And so
Mm.
it's like, no, don't talk about your feelings. Let's be factual. There is no fear here, no need to be. But the more you hide your fears and your feelings, they're not going to go away.
Mhm.
When you try to trap your feelings, they're just going to grow in there. And so now that I have learned that, I think fear is a beautiful thing. You just need to learn to embrace it and identify, is it serving you or is it blocking you?
Mm.
Wow. That was tremendously amazing to digest. Because like as insurance agents, right? We are giving them products and we're illustrating and we're creating a safety net. And then I was just reflecting on how many of our clients, want the information, but they still have that fear of commitment, But I love your touch points with you stating, you have to create a space. Well, you have to give yourself space, kind of take yourself outside of that picture and look at the bigger picture by looking at everything overall. Um, I love that you stated write things down because then you can see where it's coming from, right? And it's true, your brain is a collection of your past. I think that we are always, in this society, we're always go, 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 that we don't realize how much of the unconscious history actually shows up in our daily actions or intentions with just being about in the world. So, on the topic of emotional safety, right? I think you're bringing in a lot of like, what can we do to give us that emotional safety? Because fear is an emotion, uncertainty is an emotion, confidence, I think it's also a part of the emotions because that's feeling good, right? But what does emotional safety look like in practical everyday life for you that you can share
Mm,
with us?
yeah, that's a beautiful thing. And thank you for I think your feedback was so good because I agree with you. I feel like sometimes people view insurance as a safety net. But if you think about it and you look from a zoom out perspective, and you talked about putting it on paper, if you put insurance on paper, you really see it as an investment long term
Hmm.
and not so much as a safety net. And so I think when people see it as a safety net, then they can debate whether or not they want it. But if they see it as a long-term investment and they know exactly where it is and exactly how they can use it and exactly where it is, in their life plan, I think that changes a lot. So even for, like your career, I think that that was beautifully said.
Wait,
Because
you inspired it. You just brought it in mind, like this is what's happening, you know? So,
yeah, because safety net is very immediate, right? Safety net, it's like if I'm really at a risk, a safety net will be helpful. But if I'm not on the bridge, safety net doesn't work for me,
mhm.
right? But
Yeah,
if you think about insurance, it's not really safety net. A life insurance is really about making sure that the entire bridge is built correctly so that you
Mm,
don't need a safety net. It's really putting the bricks together so that you can cross the bridge like knowing, like I know
yeah,
because I put the brick there. I
yeah.
know this is going to work. It's not a safety net. It's the bricks that you're building the bridge, and you know for sure that you're going to get there because the bridge is solid. That's how I see it. So,
I love that. And you're not
mic
even an
drop right
insurance agent.
there.
You just blew away a lot of insurance agents with how to explain and how to visualize their business and how to approach their clients. So thank you for that. That was amazing. I'm going to snip that and put you on a reel.
Yes. I was like,
I
mic
love
drop, we're
it.
done here. That's it.
Mic drop right there.
Yeah. Like,
but
wow.
that's how I see a lot of other things, right? Like when people come to me about, this area of their lives, it's really about building the blocks so that you're not scared because when it's like iffy, right? If the bridge is, swaying from side to side, all of a sudden you're even more scared. Now you're scared of falling, you're scared of failure, you're scared of so many things. But if you are building the bridge yourself, if you know where you're going, if you know how you're going to get there. Another example that I use for my clients is like if there's a big earthquake, because we're in the Bay Area, right?
Uh-huh.
If there's a big earthquake and you wake up and the house is falling down, you don't know what is going to happen. You don't know where to go. You don't know like you're confused. You're like, what do I do now? Do I drive? Do I not drive? What belongings do I take? What belongings do I not take? Now let's imagine that somebody comes in, maybe
Mhm.
it's a firefighter, and he's going to say, look, you're going to go down to downtown and you're going to station at this library, and everybody needs to be there by 9 o'clock, and you're allowed to take X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but all of a sudden I feel a lot calmer because I'm not like now in the chaos trying to figure out what is going to happen next and what do I need to do. And I think coaches are very much like that for
Mhm.
any areas of their lives.
Mhm.
It's really like I'm going through something and I feel like the house is falling down. I just need somebody to come in and kind of tell me, like, everything is going to be okay. We just
Yeah.
need to get out of here and get out of here safely.
Yeah.
Mm,
This is the path, and then all of a sudden, because there is a path forward, you know where to go, where to meet, what to bring, then there's no chaos. The thing is, and I think Tiffany said that earlier. When there's so many signals, you feel like it's chaos because you don't know how to interpret them. Like, what
Mm,
do I do first? Do I call my parents? Do I do this? Do I do that? It's the same thing. But if somebody says, okay, hold on, let's do what the priority first. Let's
mhm.
make sure you're safe first. And then after you're safe, and we have taken all of the tools for you to continue to be safe, then we'll think about the next step. And I feel like that really leaves people like, okay, like I'm not lost anymore. It just gives people hope. Okay, I know what to do next. And sometimes they just need to know what to do next. It's not like they need anything else, but when there's just so much going on, you just need a path forward. And it's like just one step. And once they take one step and they're not in the chaos, they're like, I know what to do next. Sometimes you
Yeah.
don't need to tell them anything because they got out of the chaos. And now they're like, okay, I can breathe. Now I know what to do. It wasn't that hard, like all of a sudden they see more clearly.
Yeah. My gosh, you nailed it.
You're you're like hitting all these points that I like wanted to hit. So amazing. So most of our listeners are women of insurance. They're in financial services. They are in entrepreneurship. Like you they're balancing family. They're balancing like their business, leadership, personal goals. You talked a lot about like, building that bridge, creating that safety plan. What other advice would you give them, balancing all of these roles, balancing all these hats?
Yeah. Again, it's very hard to tell because everybody has a completely different life, especially here. What
Mm,
works for me doesn't work for you, and vice versa. So I
mhm,
normally deviate from like what works because sometimes it won't work for anyone, right? So I try never to give any advice, if anything. But what I do make people think is learn your priorities.
Mm,
Again, it's about put it in a piece of paper. What are your top five values?
mm,
What is important to you? Because I think starting from what your values are, and I have an exercise that I do with my clients on values. Like, what are your top values? And sometimes you don't know. And then I do an exercise for you to identify what they are. Um, and you are able to identify very fairly easily. And sometimes people say, "Oh, these are my top five values." And then I do an exercise with them, and they realize that only one of those five are their top values, and there are other four values they didn't know was top value. And so it's important for you to know what's important to you and why. And so once you identify what's important to you and why, I think then it's the question of are you doing more of what is important to you or less?
mm, for
Because
sure.
if you have these values and you really, let's say you really value family, but you're in a situation where you work 12 to 16 hours a day and you're not spending time with family, you're burned out,
Mhm, mhm,
right? Because you are not spending time with family and family is a priority to you.
mm,
Um, and I see that all the time, or people prioritize career,
mhm,
but they find themselves not being fulfilled in their career.
mhm.
They value free time, but they work so hard that when they come home, they make no free time. They're exhausted. And because there's no free time, now you're doing less of what you like. So I think
Mm.
for whoever, right, it's really about what are your values? How much of your life is focused on them?
Yeah, those are great. And that kind of goes into what I was going to ask you, but reflecting on that, it was in a sense when you write down what you prioritize, what you value, I think that's where we can actually stop comparing ourselves to other people. Right? I think nowadays, social media, especially Instagram, it's so easy for the human mind to say, I see this, I want to be like this, and they don't break down how that person got to that level, that status, that experience to be had because they're not writing down what they prioritize. They're not writing down their values. And so, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm happy that you have actually like a exercise for the people that you do help. But to wrap this up, Caroline, thank you so much for, joining us. You gave us so many gems and jewels here to be had and saved. And I love also that you stated, we have to build something brick by brick, build a bridge, right, for protection. And you've said it over and over and over. Write things down. When you see it visually, you have more clarity. I'm starting to journal again, and it's giving me a lot of clarity because I don't know if it's ADHD. I'm not diagnosed, but I like dipping into a lot of things at once. And so I empathize with what you stated, where it feels like chaos until you write it down, then you understand what you're prioritizing. And then you can then say, this is on the top of my list. This is on the bottom of my list. I actually feel way better. You become, I think, Tiff, like kind of like your sound bath, like we get into a flow state, right?
Mhm.
Um, and there's just more clarity with your intuition. We're tapped into our own intuition much more. Um, but one of the biggest takeaways is that growth doesn't really require certainty. It's putting things down on paper, seeing what you want to do, what you're prioritizing. It requires courage to take the next step. I think courage to ask for help, you know. Uh,
Mhm.
and I'm here for it. And so I can't wait to hear more from you later down the line. I know that you have a podcast as well.
I do. Yeah, with a friend of mine who also graduated with a coaching degree with the J. Shetty Certification School. Her name is Marina Baranowski. Shout out to her. So we do have it. It's called Coaching with Marina and Caroline. And but that's on pause for the summer because we have a lot going on in the summer. Coaching chats. I'm sorry, coaching chats with Marina and Caroline. And I do have a website, so it's safedatachange.com.
Mhm.
And the best way to reach me is through my calendar. So if somebody makes time with me on a calendar, then I go over with them about the packages. If you are in LA on July 17th, I will be speaking at a soiree, all white, and it's women entrepreneurs, and I'm really excited about that. So if you
Mhm.
are in town on the 17th of July, Friday, that's where I will be.
Oh, love it, love it.
Wow, that's so cool. I would love to hear more about that. I'm going to check out your website. Thank you again, Caroline, for spending some time with us.
And, thank you to everyone tuning in. If today's conversation inspired you, please subscribe, leave a comment or review, and share this episode with someone who may need encouragement during a season of change. We'll see you on the next episode of Women of Insurance. Bye, everyone.
Bye.